What's the creepiest thing a woman has ever done to you? I met a girl online. She seemed normal enough, so we ended up going out for a drink. That night I found out she actually lived about an hour away in a rural town, but whatever. We went out, had a drink, and then decided to go play pool. We drove over in my vehicle, and when we got to the pool hall, she checked her phone and saw a text from her ex-boyfriend. She immediately started crying and couldn't stop. I felt trapped and didn't know what to do, so I offered to take her back to her car. She said she wasn't sure she could drive and asked if I would take her home. I declined, saying it wouldn't be a good idea because, first, her car was about a mile away. Second, she lived an hour away. And third, I had no idea how she planned to get back to her car the next day. She agreed to end the night, apologizing repeatedly. The next day, she texted me, apologized again, and offered to buy me lunch. She had seemed fine while we were getting to know each other, and I was bored, so I figured why not and gave her another chance. She brought her kids to lunch. When I saw them getting out of the car, I texted her and said it wasn't okay for me to meet them. She became irate and said her sitter had canceled at the last minute. Even though she had driven an hour from her house, she didn't think to ask whether it would be weird to bring her kids. At that point, I told her I was no longer interested. Now, for the creepy part. 2 days later, she texted me again, but I didn't respond. She kept at it, repeatedly asking if I wanted to go out the next weekend. After multiple messages, I finally replied and said I wasn't interested, and that I already had plans to take my friend out for her birthday. This led to even more irate messages about how she wasn't comfortable with me going out with other girls, and similar remarks. At that point, I blocked her. It turned out she took a guess about where we would be going, since there was only one nightclub in town, and she showed up there. I had to tell the birthday girl that I was leaving and asked her to call me when she was ready to go. My night was ruined. The birthday girl got home okay, in case you're wondering. But wait, there's more. A couple of weeks later, there was an ice storm and the power went out in the area. I went over to a friend's house to hang out since they had a generator. We were playing cards and having a good time when I suddenly received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Are you all right? I'm really worried." The message read, "I'm fine. Who is this?" I replied. "It's Creepy Girl," she responded. I ignored it and put my phone down. The next message sent chills down my spine. "I'm really worried. I'm standing outside your house and all the lights are off. Are you sure you're okay?" She had never been to my house, and I had never given her my last name. My final message, before blocking her, told her not to contact me again or I would call the police. It turned out she was a secretary, or something similar, for a police department. She ran my license plate to find out where I lived, drove over an hour to my house in the middle of an ice storm, and then got a new phone number, all so she could check up on me, edit to answer a few questions. This all happened 6 or 7 years ago, so it's not recent by any stretch. While I can't prove she ran my license plate, I was using a Google Voice number attached to an email address that had none of my personal information and was used for this very purpose. Joke's on me, I guess. I found out she worked at the police department through simple online conversation. We talked for about 2 weeks before meeting, so I knew where she worked, among other things. I didn't report her, and I won't. She was a single mother, and the kid's father lived in another state. She claimed she had been abused, and reporting her would have likely gotten her fired and/or arrested. While I realized what she did was illegal, I didn't feel it was right to put those kids through that. I have no idea what she did with the kids during the ice storm. Her parents lived in the area, so I assume they stayed there. I don't know where she is now, but I'm fairly certain she no longer works at the police department. I'm fine and haven't heard from her since. I also no longer live at that house, so surprise visits probably aren't a concern. Story 2. I knew this girl for a few years, and she always seemed nice enough, I guess. We were never really friends, but we ran in the same circles. She was very heavy and quite short. Not at all my type, and she came on to me a few times when I was in a relationship. I used that as an excuse because I didn't want to be mean. Eventually, when I was single, I was at a local bar dancing with some friends. She suddenly appeared and started aggressively trying to grind on me, so I went to the bar. She followed me, grabbed my buns, and began caressing my chest. At this point, I told her I wasn't interested and stepped outside for a cigarette. When I came back in, she immediately tried to dance with me again as I passed through the door. I told her again I wasn't interested. Then she held my dong, smiled, and asked, What's wrong? I shoved her off and told her to leave me the hell alone, then went to another bar. About a month later, I saw her post on Facebook about the patriarchy, how creepy men are, and how women need to fight back against men who are touching them in bars, which is exactly what she had done to me. I thought about commenting, but instead, I just deleted her and blocked her. Friggin' crazy goblin lady. Story 3. Once, an acquaintance added me on Facebook. When I clicked on her profile, it said she was in a relationship. The person she was listed as dating was a fake account of me, using my picture. Story 4. The one and only time I used Tinder, I hooked up with a girl in Arkansas. The fun time ended when she begged me to come inside, which might be a thing in some situations, but not with someone you just met. I told her, I'm not gonna do that. She pushed me off and started crying, saying things like, I just want a baby so someone will love me. I felt kind of bad, so I talked her down, bought her some food, and she thanked me and went home. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just going through a rough time. But about a week later, I came home from work and found my front door open. It looked like someone had tried to yank it off the hinges. Then I noticed her car parked across the street. This little psycho had gotten drunk, driven to my house, broken in, and was sleeping all bare in my bed. The cops were called, and she panicked and left. I don't know what happened to her after that, but I sure as hell never used Tinder again. Story 5. I was in New Orleans watching some street performers go wild when a woman came up behind me and fully grabbed both of my cheeks. I was 18 years old and standing right next to both of my parents. She then said, "Hey, you remind me of my son," which is probably one of the strangest things anyone could say in that moment. Story 6. There was a girl in my dorm who had a crush on my roommate. He clearly wasn't interested and told her several times. Things escalated to the point where my roommate would sometimes come running back to the room yelling, lock the door, and moments later, she and her friend would try to barge in without permission. The creepiest part came later. One night, we apparently left our room unlocked, and she snuck in and played with and rubbed our heads while we were asleep. We didn't wake up, but her roommate told us what happened a couple of days later. I haven't seen her in about a year, and I'm very glad for that. Story 7. In my first year of university, there was this girl. I don't even know when we met. She just somehow knew me. She always knew my classes, my projects, my deadlines, and everything, and would constantly remind me about upcoming stuff. I thought she was just a strangely helpful person, and she really was helping me, so I didn't want her to stop. Since we never really talked except for her reminding me about deadlines, I asked her to grab a coffee and chat sometime. The next day, she was waiting for me at the end of my class. I'm pretty sure I said, sometime, not tomorrow, and I already had plans with my friends. I said hi and passed her by to join my friends. She looked at me with a serious face and said, "Aren't you going to wait for me?" I told her I was going with my friends and said she should call me next time before making plans. About 15 minutes later, she called and asked if we could get coffee. At the time, I was doing a street photo shoot with a friend, so I told her what I was doing and said she could come by if she wanted. I sent her my live location. A few hours later, she still hadn't shown up, and I was heading back to campus for another class. That's when I noticed she had been following me the whole time. She came over to talk as soon as she realized I had noticed her. Luckily, I ran into a close female friend who came up to say hi, hugged me, and kissed me on the cheek. I guess the creepy girl thought she was my girlfriend because she slowly walked away after that. I was pretty shaken and never spoke to her again. I ghosted her for about a week, and then COVID happened, which made it easy to disappear completely. Story 8. A coworker who was 4 years older than me started showing romantic interest in me. I worked at a fast food restaurant and was regularly sent to help at another store about 45 minutes away. She used to work at my original store but had been fired before I started. Later, she got a job as a team leader at the other location, though she still lived in my town. The arrangement was that I'd get up at 6 in the morning. She'd pick me up, and we'd drive to the other town together. We worked until at least midnight, and often until after 1 in the morning. Everyone who knew her warned me not to let her get her claws into me. Weird phrasing, but apparently she was definitely going to try to sleep with me. One of my best friends worked there too and was her ex. I hadn't spoken to him much since he was working 80 hours a week and I was at university before taking a year out. But I was loyal to him and wasn't going to do anything to hurt him. I dismissed the warnings and figured she wouldn't try anything. On the first shift, I didn't ride up with her, but she showed up for the evening shift and drove me home afterward. Her first words to me were, "I'm not as bad as everyone says I am." And I instantly panicked. After a few weeks, she became like my closest friend. the person I spent the vast majority of my time with. I really liked her, but only as a friend. It turned out she was interested in me romantically, but I didn't feel the same way. One day, she suggested I go out with another girl working there, who was 16, saying we'd be so cute together. I asked her how old she thought I was. I was nearly 21, and she got a little embarrassed. I heard a million stories about this girl, but after a few months, I stopped going up to that store. Everyone in both stores, except for me, disliked her, but I understood her. I heard her side of everything and knew her better than anyone. We had spent so much time together just talking, and she knew me well too, because she was the ex of a close friend, and they hated each other. Nothing ever happened, though there were a few close calls. Anyway, I left that job, and a few months later, she essayed a 17-year-old, and then fled the country. He ended up getting $35,000 from the restaurant. Story 9. How about the agent I spoke to when her company was trying to headhunt me? The woman asked me out for a drink, and I politely declined, telling her I was married. Her response? She went through my social media to find my wife, located her shop on an online platform, and contacted her under the guise of a buyer with questions. She asked for my wife's social media to stay in touch in case she wanted to buy anything again. Then she started messaging my wife, pretending to be someone in a band, talking about music, and trying to get my wife to be friends with her. For context, my wife had some success with her band years before we met. The problem was the woman wasn't really into metal or punk, so my wife saw straight through it and had a bit of a freak out about some nutcase trying to contact her. She showed me the profile picture, same as the agent's, and I confirmed it was her. We reported her to her company. Story 10. I dated a girl in high school nicknamed Crazy Katie. Should have been a red flag. We dated for a few months, but I broke up with her when she kicked my dog. This was in 2008 to 2009. Now, I own my own place and live with my cousin. Long story short, when my aunt and uncle passed away, I became her legal guardian. I had to fight hard, since courts in the South are reluctant to give custody to a single guy, but things worked out, and overall, it's been great. Despite having to move across the country, she's adjusting well. She's actually attending my old high school, which is nice because I'm still on good terms with a few teachers and deans. Flash forward to 2 weeks ago. She asked if a friend could come over after school. I said it was no problem, but wanted to check with the friend's parents first. I told her that if a parent wanted to chaperone, that was fine. I spoke with the girl's father, and he said her sister would most likely pick her up once the girls were done hanging out. The young lady came over, and, well, you can probably guess who she is. She's the little sister of my high school girlfriend. We had an awkward chat at first, but everything seemed fine. Her dad remembered me and was completely okay with it, so I was feeling pretty good. After a few hours, Rachel announced that Caddy was on her way to pick her up and that she had a great time. Caddy arrived, and we had a bit of small talk. She made a couple of flirty comments, which I brushed off without thinking much of it. Over the next 3 days, my phone blew up with texts, calls, Facebook messages, you name it. I tried to tell her nicely that I wasn't interested, but she came back with, "Why not? You're single. I'm single. We could just have some casual fun." I dropped a firm no and left it at that. The girls continued hanging out, and I would drive them back home. I also had a spare key hidden just in case my cousin lost hers, though that soon became irrelevant for the reasons that followed. I came home last Friday around 9 and immediately noticed something was wrong. My dog didn't come to greet me, which was very unusual. I went into the yard and found her in the backyard, even though I knew I had left her inside. She bolted back into the house and stopped dead at my bedroom door, growling like a frigging werewolf. That's when I heard a squealing noise from inside the room. I panicked. I do have a gun in my bedroom, and my first thought was that someone might find it and shoot my dog. I grabbed the gun I keep in my office and rushed into my bedroom. There was Katie, all bare, on my bed, with an ungodly amount of toys scattered around the room. I ordered her to leave. That's when I realized she was in the middle of calling 911, telling them I was threatening her life and that my dog was trying to kill her. I put my dog into her bed and waited for the police to arrive. They showed up shockingly fast, though it felt like a lifetime. In the middle of all this, my cousin came home. Katie immediately spun an entire story, claiming I had abused her, that I'd been threatening and stalking her, blackmailing her into being intimate, and even accusing me of having an inappropriate relationship with my cousin. Despite all the BS the cops sometimes deal with, the officers who arrived turned out to be angels. After a quick review of my security system and the texts on my phone, they arrested her. I feel extremely fortunate that she didn't harm my dog, and the only things damaged weren't anything sentimental. After she was taken away, I had a very awkward conversation with her father to explain what had happened. He took it surprisingly well. He did ask if Rachel would be allowed back over. I guess she had been listening, but I told him that wouldn't be an issue as long as Caddy never came near my house again. I've filed a restraining order, and she will be enjoying a taxpayer-funded vacation for a while. And that, children, is why you never stick your dong in crazy. Story 11. I met this girl on Hinge who was also a Star Wars fan and asked her out. When we met up, I could tell she was very self-conscious, and I felt bad for her because I'm self-conscious most days too. I tried to be complimentary, and overall, the date went well. On the second date, we went to a bar to see a Van Halen cover band. It went pretty well, but she wanted to hold hands a lot and started kissing me frequently. I figured if she was that comfortable, it was fine. Later, she convinced me to stay over. By convinced, I mean she nearly broke down when I said I wanted to wait at least one more date. I gave in, and we did it twice. It was amazing, which explains why I waited 2 more weeks before cutting it off. After that, the bad signs started. I work a Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 job, but I have meetings and can't be on my phone all the time. If I took longer than 10 minutes to respond to a text, I would get messages like, "Guess I'm not important enough to talk to," or "Sorry, didn't mean to bother you. I'll just go away." Halfway through that week, she stayed the night. She didn't want to do it before bed, which was fine, but she woke me up at around 3 a.m., and I had to be at work at 8. We did it then, and she started an argument because I didn't call her babe, since I don't usually use pet names. She left, and the next day I got another one of those, "Guess I'm not important enough to talk to" messages. I decided to end it right there. We had 3 official dates, banged 3 times, and she completely lost it. My phone blew up with texts and calls. I didn't check it all afternoon and ended up with hundreds of messages and about 40 voicemails. She was crying at work, got fired, and blamed me. Eventually, I wished her well and blocked her. 3 months later, she added me on Snapchat. I thought maybe she had gotten some help and was doing better, so we chatted a little, mostly small talk. Then she said she wanted to see me. I told her I wasn't sure that was a good idea, and she asked why. I asked if she remembered why I broke up with her, and she got extremely upset again, sending crazy long messages claiming I had hurt her and then ghosted her. Obviously, not what happened. I wished her the best, told her I hoped she got the help she needed, and blocked her. I really do hope she gets the help she needs because I feel bad for her. Best I ever had, though. Hands down. Story 12. A really attractive girl I had on Facebook added me on Snapchat and started saying I was cute. She mentioned she had recently broken up with her boyfriend and needed a friend. I was kind of stoked and got along well with her. Over a couple of days, we went back and forth with maybe 40 to 50 snaps. She then got flirty and started talking about meeting up at her house when her parents weren't home. I was cautious since it was so soon, but I was kind of digging it too. Since we hadn't met in person, I asked her to send the usual hold up a fork and smile photo so I knew she was who I thought she was, and she did. I was stoked. She even started sending pictures that included her face. Then she asked for pictures in return, which I refused. Weirdly, she then asked me to at least show her my legs. I said all right and sent a picture of my legs lying in bed. That's when I started getting really weirded out by the whole thing. Who the heck is turned on by a man's hairy legs? Anyway, I decided to message her on Facebook, and she had no idea who I was. She said the Snapchat was fake. I realized that a girl she knew, someone I had previously turned down, had saved hundreds of photos of her, somehow acquired partially bare photos too, and used a hacked Snapchat to send me fake snaps as if they were real time. It was so convincing that it was scary how real it seemed. Moral of the story. 9 times out of 10, it's too good to be true, guys. Don't send picture of your jingle bells to strangers. Story 13. There was a younger girl in high school whom I had never spoken to, not even once, who apparently had a crush on me. One day, I found a note from her in my locker asking if I wanted to go out with her. I had no idea how to get it back to her, so I simply wrote "no" on it and taped it to my locker. After that, she started following me everywhere. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would just keep walking, pretending I wasn't speaking to her at all. This went on for about 2 years. One day, I was hanging out by myself in the neighborhood when she walked up with 3 guys who wanted to beat me up over some dumb, unrelated issue. She had somehow found out about it and brought them to me. After an embarrassing scene where I managed to defuse the situation with these angry guys, they finally left. She then sat down on the curb right next to me and started flirting. All I could do was stare at her enormous bangs with a complete what the hell expression until she got embarrassed and walked away. Story 14. I was bored at a small local festival and didn't really want to be there, so I got a drink and started walking around aimlessly. I noticed a fire breather whose act was interesting and she was pretty attractive. When she took a break to get a drink, we started talking. She seemed nice. We laughed a bit, but her break ended and she went back to her act. I left her to it and continued wandering around. About 5 minutes later, security was called to her performance. It turned out that some girl I had never met before had been following me around the festival and assaulted the fire breather. She claimed that we were together and that the fire breather was trying to break us up. Story 15. This was about 4 years ago. I was 22 and asked a girl I had met out. She seemed nice at first. We met at a small cafe while I was waiting to meet some friends, and we ended up talking about Pokemon and other random things for about 20 or 30 minutes before adding each other on Facebook. The only strange thing was that during that short time, she told me she had been assaulted by her ex. I figured she might just be very open about it as a way of dealing with the trauma, so I let it slide and messaged her later to see if she'd be interested in a date. She told me she already had a boyfriend, but said she'd be happy to hang out as friends, which seemed fair, so I agreed. We met up a few days later. She brought her boyfriend, which I expected. I got the sense that he wasn't very comfortable with me, which I could understand. But what really threw me was that she also brought her ex. I can't be 100% sure it was the same ex she had mentioned, but he gave off that impression based on how he talked and behaved around her. On top of that, she kept obsessively talking about dead, babies, and abortions. No matter what I tried, I couldn't change the subject. It completely creeped me out, so I just sat there, smiled, and stayed civil while internally thinking, please don't kill me. I haven't spoken to her since. Story 16. I was at a friend's birthday party for her dog, which was probably just an excuse to have people over and get drunk. Another friend, let's call her M, was also there. I'd known M for a couple of years, but I only really saw her a couple of times a year. She was very drunk and very married. Her husband was at the same party. At one point during the night, she asked me if I had a girlfriend, which I didn't, whether I was looking for a girlfriend, and where I had been looking. Then she told me I had been looking in all the wrong places and that if I wanted a good girl, I should let her know. During this conversation, she kept trying to grab my hand. At one point, I made sure to always be holding a handful of mini pretzels in both hands as an excuse not to hold hands. I can't hold hands if I'm holding pretzels. Logic. Eventually she said, I like you. I really like you. I replied, okay. This repeated a few times until she said, stop saying okay. It makes me feel like you think I'm bullshitting. After that, she kept following me around the room and trying to get me to dance with her until I finally left. Her husband was almost always in the same room as us, never more than a few feet away while all of this was happening. I thought I was imagining the whole thing. Until another friend asked me that same night as we were leaving, was M trying to hit on you? Story 17. I had a friend who went absolutely crazy after her boyfriend broke up with her, cutting, trying to force him to get back together, getting him kicked out of the group to isolate him, which backfired, throwing fits and so on. And that was only freshman year. When he started dating another girl from our group senior year, she pretended to be cool, only to lie to the new girl and try to convince her to break up with him because he was definitely texting her the night before. She also told the new girl that he hated her, that she was ugly, and that he actually loved the crazy girl and was only with the new girl to make her jealous. Many other things happened too. Story 18. I met a girl online and we chatted and set up a date. The date went fine. She was a little weird and a little sheltered but seemed nice. There wasn't much chemistry, but I figured that could take time, so we went on a second date. On that date, I confirmed I had no interest in a relationship, and we talked it out. No hard feelings, let's just be friends. Fast forward about a year and a half. I'm in my kitchen with some friends, getting ready to go out for my birthday dinner when we hear a knock at the door. I check, and no one is there, but there's a box with my name on it. There's a card and some gifts, which would have been nice if this girl had ever been to my house before. I had moved since our 2 dates and still have no idea how she found me. Story 19. During my last year of high school, I tutored students after school. About halfway through the year, a new girl came in and sat next to me. The first thing she said was something like, do you want to see my birth control? She had an implant in her arm and showed me where it was. She then felt my arm and told me I was hairy. For the rest of the session, she kept prying for personal information, asking about my friends and where I lived. I didn't see her in tutoring after that, but one day during lunch, she came up to my table while I was chatting with friends, inserted herself into the conversation, and then left, randomly. A few days later, I heard she had been suspended for having either drugs or a knife in her backpack. Story 20. I started going to a new doctor, and the receptionist was cute, so I flirted a little. It was in the waiting room with other patients around, and it seemed pretty innocent. She reciprocated, and I figured it was all in good fun. Over time, she escalated, scheduling me for days she was working, calling me directly with reminders, and so on. Then she accessed the records, got my cell number, and started texting me, saying she wanted to meet up, that she wasn't happy with her husband, and that they never do it anymore. I noped out as fast as I could. Story 21. I've had a couple of semi-stalkerish women who creeped on me, which is weird because I'm not even that good looking, but my favorite creepy girl story was just a one-off funny moment. When I was 22, I was hanging out with a couple of friends, grilling and drinking, when one of them suddenly said, "Do you guys want to go to a costume party?" Naturally, we said yes. We threw together some quick costumes and hopped in an Uber. We got to the place, and it was less of a costume party and more like 6 people in an apartment wearing costumes, but there was beer and a dog, so I was happy. Anyway, we spent the evening playing board games with this group of people who seemed just as confused as we were. All night, there was this one girl sitting next to me on the couch who hadn't said a single word. Not one. I didn't think much of it. Some people are shy, it's whatever. Then, during a lull in the party, out of nowhere, she leaned closer to me, looked me dead in the eye, and whispered, "I like blood." Then she shifted back to her spot as if nothing happened. I turned to my friend and said, "We have to leave. I still think about that night sometimes." Story 22. This was, thankfully, an online-only interaction. It started innocently enough with a random person on Twitter asking me questions about my religious beliefs. I was active on Twitter at the time and was more than happy to talk about them in an informative way. Never in a trying to convert you or this is the only right way to live manner. The conversation quickly turned strange when she began asking whether I thought people who were lying about who they were should admit to their sins. I stopped replying. That's when things really went downhill. She started harassing me at all hours on Twitter. It spread to comments on my blog and emails sent through the blog's comment form. The messages were erratic and hard to follow. But I eventually found other people she had stalked or harassed and pieced together what it was all about. A few years earlier, she had a beef with a guy who lived in New Zealand. He cut off contact, but she began contacting his family, friends, and boss, telling them that he had done bad things to children. He worked at a school, so an accusation like that could have ended his career. Luckily, he had warned his boss ahead of time, and they ignored the claims. It also helped that her only proof was that God told her. Did I forget to mention that she claimed she was a prophet of God and that he literally spoke to her, telling her about the bad things people supposedly did? Because that's exactly what she claimed. And good luck arguing with, "God told me you're guilty." Who is she going to believe? Your mountain of evidence, or the voice of God in her head? Anyway, she found me online and decided that I was actually a fake identity for the New Zealand guy. Her evidence was that we both enjoyed photography. I guess that means all photos posted online are really mine. No wonder I never have any free time. As I said before, arguing with her was pointless. God had told her that I had stolen photos of my family from someone else and was pretending to be a married man in New York when I was really the New Zealand guy. You can't argue with God. I tried contacting the police, but she lived in Canada, and there wasn't anything they could do. I, along with others, reported her Twitter account, but she always had a few spare accounts ready to jump to. The harassment intensified when she told me she was going to contact all the companies I did business with through my blog and inform them of my crimes, which were the same ones she accused the New Zealand guy of, since we were the same person in her mind. I had to warn a few people ahead of time, just in case. She also threatened to contact the local police about me, but luckily she didn't know exactly where I lived, which is one reason I don't post my precise location online. She even posted threats on my wife's blog. This went on off and on for about a year. She would move on to another target, we would warn that person, and they would block her. She would then claim that we were all part of some kind of massive hacking group that broke into people's Twitter accounts to force them to block her, when in reality, they just disagreed with her. This conspiracy eventually included police departments as well. According to her, we had hacked the police to make her complaints disappear after she had supposedly been personally told they were going to arrest us. Neither the hacking nor the supposed threats of arrest ever actually happened. Eventually, I found her IP address and came up with a plan to block her from my website. I edited the site so that she would get a 404-page not found error if she tried to visit, while everyone else could access it normally. Being a web developer came in handy for once. She went on Twitter, bragging about her success at taking me offline. She's still online and bothering people. Boy George and the head of Firefox are among her past targets. She's left me alone for years, though. I've since stopped blogging, not because of her, but due to life, and cut back on my Twitter use, so I don't think she'll focus on me again. I don't even wish for her to be arrested. I just hope she gets the psychiatric care she clearly needs. Story 23. It was my ex-girlfriend. I didn't realize she was creepy until I tried to end things and failed. The first few times were my fault for being weak-willed and dumb. She would offer to be intimate or something else, or just treat me kindly for a while, and I'd convince myself that things could be okay again. So I'd resume the relationship. Eventually, I actually learned my lesson, but by then, I realized she was truly my crazy ex. And that part was just sad. There are many stories, all long and wild, but the short version is this. She told everyone we were still together for more than a year after I had really ended it. She enrolled at my university, giving up her dream of attending a different school she had always wanted to go to and had actually gotten into, just so she could cross paths with me. She even enrolled in a class where I was teaching a lab without me knowing. She showed up randomly at my parents' house and told them we were still together, which worked the first time. Story 24. I started dating a girl who lived about an hour away, so we only saw each other occasionally. One day, while I was out, she decided to drive to my place and convinced my roommate to let her into my room. She then covered my room with glow-in-the-dark stars and left. I came home later after being at a party with liquor and weed. My roommate was asleep and didn't tell me anything. I went to bed still drunk and high, turned off the lights, and genuinely thought I was losing my mind because I couldn't tell whether I was inside or outside, staring up at the night sky. My roommate didn't explain what happened until the next day. Story 25. Last year, I dated a girl for a few weeks. She was nice, but some obvious red flags slowly emerged. Overall, it seemed like she had no life, no interests, no friends. And she almost threw a tantrum when I tried introducing her to mine. No hobbies besides reality television. And she was still working at her high school fast food job at the age of 32. She was upset when we broke up, but didn't make a huge deal out of it. She wanted to stay in contact, but we lost touch almost immediately, as I didn't want to drag things out. About 6 months later, I was dating someone else and had made it official. One night, while at a friend's house, I decided to take a selfie of us and post it on Facebook. The next morning, my girlfriend alerted me to a nasty comment left by the previous girl. It was middle school level stuff. She outright insulted my girlfriend, saying, "Ew, she has big teeth," and added that she thought she was going to get a second chance with me. Keep in mind, we had zero communication in those 6 months. I had never once given her the impression I was interested in seeing her again. I was super pissed about the teeth comment, and my girlfriend was a little upset, but we've gotten a lot of laughs out of it since. I'm glad I dodged that bullet. I'm actually sparing you a lot of details. There were plenty of small things she did while we were dating that made me realize how much of a loser she really was, but I don't have time to type up an entire essay about it. Story 26. I was hanging out with someone during a casual getting to know each other phase. Nothing exclusive. I showed her a magic trick, something very simple. After the trick, she started to freak out, saying she wasn't into witch stuff or black magic. I tried to explain that it was just a trick, but from that point on, I got a weird vibe. After that, my instincts were more alert, and I eventually told her I didn't want to continue seeing her because I started noticing patterns I didn't like. Story 27, I dated a girl who was close with her cousin. I slowly learned that everyone hated her cousin, but they were afraid to tell me to avoid the girl-hard-cousin combo. I kept dating the girl, and her cousin started showing up more often. At first it was fine, but then the lying began. I had never met a compulsive liar before, so I couldn't believe no one was saying anything while this girl blatantly lied. Crazy, insane, nonsensical lies. Non-stop, constant, really weird lies. I once fell out of an airplane level lies. It got worse. I told the girl I didn't want to be around her cousin anymore. She understood. Then the cousin somehow got my number and started calling and texting me, claiming she had driven by my friend's house, 45 minutes away, and that the girl was cheating on me. I knew she wouldn't be driving near my friend's place. I told her never to contact me again. She said, "But I thought we were friends." I just blocked the number, dumped the girl, and ran away. Story 28. In college, I used to deliver pizza to a certain hotel quite frequently. There was a cute girl at the front desk who would smile at me, and sometimes I'd bring her a slice. One day, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink after work, and I agreed. It turned into a 2-hour-long vent session about her ex, during which she had a solitary drink. She said she never had more than one drink when out, which made sense because she was tiny. About 20 minutes in, I tried to change the subject or interject a bit just to keep the conversation going. Finally, she left. The bartender poured a Jaeger bomb for both of us and gave me a "whew, glad that's over" look. About a week later, I was back delivering to the restaurant when the front desk girl mentioned she was bummed that I hadn't asked her out. I figured she might have just been having a rough day, so I gave her another shot. We agreed to grab another drink at my usual spot after work. This time, she didn't show, which I was fine with. I had a nice night with some friends and didn't think much of it. The next day, she texted apologizing, saying her friends needed her after a breakup, and that she had to drink an entire bottle of Jack with them as tradition. At this point, her behavior seemed inconsistent and strange, so I decided to steer clear from then on. Now, for the creepy part. Every time I went into the hotel to deliver, she would be there, asking why I hadn't tried to hang out, and I'd make some excuse. At one point, I even claimed to be sober to avoid getting a drink. I started getting late-night texts from her that were kind of cryptic. Things like, "You should really reconsider that thing," or "I think the server Molly isn't very cute." Completely out of left field, the kind of stuff a crazy person would send. As the days went by, I noticed her eyes were always on me whenever I delivered to the hotel. If she was talking to a guest, she would break the conversation just to look at me. It was unnerving. As delivery drivers, we usually fought over who got that hotel because it was so easy. But I started giving those deliveries away because she was creeping me out so badly. Story 29. My first legitimate relationship was with a super clingy girl who knew way too much about my house after only being there 3 times. My parents were out of town, and we were sitting in the hot tub when the power went out. She said, "Oh, you probably just need to reset the breaker. It's in the laundry room on the left wall labeled hot tub." I was like, "How the heck do you know that?" She got nervous and said, I don't know. I broke up with her after she started telling her family that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together and saying things like, "when we get a house, when we have kids, and when we get a dog." I met her on a dating app and only knew her for 3 months, but she started showing all the creepy signs after just 1 month. Story 30. I'm a girl, and I ended up at the same college as my ex's new girlfriend while I was doing my second degree. She was about 4 years younger than me. I started getting a very strange feeling that I was being watched during lectures. These were huge lecture halls with 300 plus people. I knew she was in my course, and I'd heard she was a bit odd. Visually, she looked almost elfish, with wild, unbrushed hair and an extremely unkempt appearance. She would show up wearing makeup from the day before. I began seeing her everywhere on campus. It was a big college, so at first I wasn't sure if it was just coincidence, but it kept happening, and I started to freak out. I developed crippling anxiety because she was always there. She and her friend would deliberately take photos of me during lectures, pointing and whispering. I ignored her completely and never interacted with her. I just went about my business. It was incredibly creepy how obsessed she seemed with watching me and taking pictures. At one point, she even made a photo of me and my friend her Facebook profile picture. She was a weird girl, and I honestly hope she got the help she needed. Story 31. I started working at an engineering firm in document control. The department had 12 women and 1 other man besides me. The woman who trained me was second in command. It began with a few questionable compliments about my build, and she would always arrange for me to work directly with her, even though nobody else helped her. There was no single thing I could point to, but it was obvious she had a thing for me. I used it to my advantage, never being mean, but never encouraging it either. I would try to bring up her husband when she started to send the message that I was not interested. This went on for 9 months, then we moved buildings. She called me into her office, saying she needed me to go to the old building to pick up some heavy boxes. When we got there, it was 2 medium boxes, maybe 20 pounds each. On the car ride back, she started talking about how her marriage wasn't working and that she was planning to leave her husband, who was a Marine and state trooper. She suggested we take a break before going back and drove us to a park by the river. All subtlety was gone when she parked and said, "I want to give you a blowy right now." She wasn't very attractive and had crazy eyes, so I declined. Besides, there was an engineer there I had strong chemistry with, 10 out of 10 wife material. I didn't want to jeopardize the possibility of dating her. That was pretty much the end of it. She backed off and didn't cause any problems. I got promoted a few months later and left the department. She ended up having a few kids with her husband, and as of the last time I checked a few years ago, they were still together. This all happened in 2007, so I'm sure she's constantly messing around on him. Story 32. I went to a house party in undergrad with a friend. We were in another friend's bedroom looking through his collection of music downloaded from Napster. This was 2003. I was sitting at the computer cycling through the music when a girl I didn't know, who was also at the party, started dancing next to me. I stood up and danced with her for about 30 seconds when she suddenly pushed me onto the bed and jumped on top of me. I was pretty drunk and felt like I couldn't do anything. It felt like she was licking my face. I'm not sure how much time passed. Probably only 15 to 20 seconds, but eventually my friend came back in, pulled her off me, and took me home. The next day, I found out she was a sorority sister of a friend of mine, which completely boggled my mind. Story 33. I had a girlfriend once, and things weren't really going well. After repeatedly trying to talk to her and not getting my points across, and with her insisting everything should stay as it was, I broke up with her. It was around Easter, so my family and I were having a nice dinner. Later, as I went to bed, I checked my phone. 170 to 180 missed calls. I took screenshots and sent them to a friend so I could have a witness to what had happened. Story 34. I'm a girl, and this situation involved a crazy girl my boyfriend used to date. My boyfriend and I met on Tinder and became exclusive after only a few dates. I asked about his past relationships, and he said he had recently dated someone casually who had the same name as me, a very common name in the US. He said it wasn't serious and that she was never his girlfriend, but apparently she didn't feel the same way. 8 months later, we ended up moving in together. He moved into the apartment where I had already been living alone for a full year. Guess who taught at the studio right across the street from my building? Yep, the ex with the same name. Randomly, I got a Facebook message from this person telling me to stop stalking her and to tell my boyfriend to stop parking outside her work. The message also said I needed to stop purposefully walking my dog with my boyfriend holding hands on a specific day when she was always working. I showed it to my boyfriend immediately and didn't respond. She had messaged him too, but he didn't see it, basically saying the same thing, except even crazier. She waited about 10 minutes for him to respond before messaging me, even though I've never talked to her in my life. She then started saying her dog had died and her dad had died, along with other things, clearly trying to make him feel bad for her, after she had accused us of stalking her. Around that time, my car ended up with some scratches that looked deliberate. I can't confirm it was her, but both of our cars were always parked outside our apartment and in full view of where she worked. I still wonder if it was her. We moved buildings shortly after, but stayed within the same complex. Story 35. This was about 25 years ago. I met a girl online who was seriously attractive, like extremely attractive. If someone like that messaged me today, I'd assume it was spam nonsense, but she was legit. We talked for a while, and I never really saw her creepy side on the phone or in chat rooms. I was young and dumb, so my brain basically went, whoa, I must get it on with this woman at all costs. Once we started meeting in public, things began to feel off. No matter what place we were in, there was always someone she claimed to know who treated her badly. There was always some evil guy who supposedly wanted to be her boyfriend and had wronged her. I eventually asked a few of the people she pointed out, and they were completely confused, saying things like, "What the hell? She said that about me? I don't even know her." The final straw for me came when I was invited to a friend's party, and I invited her along. After I picked her up, she begged me to let her friend come too. I knew my friend would be a bit annoyed that I was already inviting this girl, and if she brought a friend, it wouldn't go over well. Mostly because it wasn't meant to be a 50-person party, just a small gathering. I told her, "Sorry, it isn't my party, and I'm already reaching pretty far inviting you." Almost instantly, she burst into the biggest, loudest belly-crying fit I have ever witnessed. She was 18 years old, screaming and crying at the top of her lungs in the passenger seat of my car. It was so loud I wanted to roll the windows down to protect my ears, but I was too embarrassed that others might hear her. She kept screaming about how unfair it was and asking why I hated her and her friend. I couldn't even think of anything to say. It caught me completely off guard and made no sense. I was only 20 at the time, so I didn't make the best choice, but it worked out. I decided I would tell her I'd changed my mind and we could bring her friend, but when she got out to knock on her door, I drove off. And I did. I got a few crappy online messages from her afterward, but that was it. Thankfully, she didn't know where I lived, and she seemed to drop it quickly. Oh, and yes, we did hook up once. Physically, it wasn't as good as I had hoped, but visually, she was stunning. She was completely bat-crap insane, but absolutely stunning to look at. Story 36. After college, my mom tried to get me to go to Christian meet and greets all the time so I could meet a nice Christian girl. She really pushed this Thursday night BBQ social that her friend Sandy's kid attended regularly. She said they had BBQ and lots of attractive girls. It's not church, she insisted. It's just a get-together. I decided to go out of boredom. It was totally church, but she wasn't lying about the food. They had good BBQ and, surprisingly, a lot of good-looking women in their early 20s. I met one girl named Charlene. She was 22, very attractive, with long brown hair, a great smile, and funny and engaging. She was a little too super into Jesus for me, but I thought that wouldn't be a problem. I was wrong, very wrong. I said, listen, I'm never coming back to this thing. Can I get your number and we can just hang out? She gave me her number, and we agreed to go out the following Friday. I picked her up that day, and we went out and had a good time. When I brought her back home, I leaned in for a kiss. She kissed passionately at first, but then suddenly pulled back. I asked if everything was okay. She said that it was the first time she had ever kissed someone. I was flabbergasted. 22, very pretty, and seemingly normal. How had she never kissed anyone? I asked, why? Then she said one of the creepiest things anyone has ever said to me. She said, and I quote, I was saving myself for you. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there for a minute. It sounded desperately creepy, and this was our first date. I managed to say, well, that's good. Then we sat in awkward silence, and I finally said, I really need to go. She got up, slammed the car door, and ran inside. I blocked her number, ghosted her, and tried to forget the whole thing ever happened. Fast forward 5 years. I was married, and my wife, sister-in-law, and I were going to see the old youth pastor from their hometown because he and his wife had just had a baby. In the dark hospital parking lot, we got inside the elevator when someone ran in and yelled, "Hold the door." She got on the elevator. She never turned around, just stood there the wrong way, looking at me while the doors closed. She said, "Hey." I said, "Yes?" She said, "It's Charlene." I said, oh, no. She still didn't turn around as the elevator went up. My sister-in-law asked, "Do you two know each other?" Charlene said, "Yeah, we dated." I wanted to crawl inside my own skin. My wife held out her hand and said, "Hi, I'm his wife." The worst elevator ride of my life. When we got to the maternity ward and the doors opened, she finally turned around. Guess where she was going? Same room as us. She knew the pastor's wife. Terrible night. Awkward as hell. She was still as weird as she had been on our first date, but even more into Jesus. Story 37, I dated a girl for a couple of months. The whole time I knew she was cheating on me, but I wasn't serious about her, so I didn't really care. One day, her phone was on the table between us when she got a text. We both looked down, and it was clearly a text from some guy. She grabbed it as quickly as possible. I asked, "Oh, so you're cheating on me?" She got extremely defensive and claimed it was one of her clients. She helped mentally challenged people. She even had his first and last name saved as his contact. The next day, I looked him up on the dating app we had met on. He was there and clearly not mentally challenged. I didn't message him, but the app shows who views your profile. He then blocked me, which made me wonder what she had told him. There was no reason for him to block me otherwise. Fast forward a month. I texted her, "Are you still coming over tonight?" She replied that she couldn't, but wouldn't tell me why. After some time, she finally admitted, "I got engaged last night." I replied, "Oh, so you were cheating on me the whole time." She still claimed she never cheated on me, saying this guy was her best friend, but they weren't dating. Either way, that was messed up. So I just never replied. It's been about 7 years since then. She's had roughly 4 fiancés back to back, but never been married. Story 38. I dated a girl for 8 months. It started out okay, but it quickly escalated. She made me check my phone every day and read all my private conversations, even with family. She forced me to make new social media accounts and didn't let me see my own brother or my best friends for 6 months because she feared I might cheat. I was even hit when I didn't say the right thing, all while being made to believe this was love. After it ended, I had no friends to turn to because she had isolated me, and no family support because she claimed I had hurt them by being with her. I lost all my college grades and my job as she phoned in to claim I had hit her in a store. 5 months later, the aftermath is still pretty rough. Story 39. We met on Tinder, but I lived in a small town about an hour away from the big city she was in. I was desperate at the time, but looking back, it should have been a warning sign that her distance was set so high. I was still fairly new to Tinder, and while I knew most people meet on the day they first connect, my traditional values had me offering to pick her up, and surprisingly, she accepted. When I arrived, I knocked on her door. She answered and handed me a cat because she was trying to herd the other cat away from the door with her foot and needed her hands. She invited me in so I could see what she sold on Etsy before we left for the theater. She had made phone cases with Barbie heads sticking out and earrings with googly eyes. It was all terrible. The date went fine, and I continued texting her the next day. Like I said, I was desperate. There literally wasn't a single girl my age in my whole town. Sunday night came around, and I texted her good night. She replied with, "Good night," and I went to sleep. I woke up to over 20 messages. She started at 2 in the morning and sent a second one 5 minutes later, asking why I hadn't responded. A few minutes after that, she began ranting about how this always happens to her and how every guy ignores her. Then she started asking what was wrong with her, listing different possibilities, and just kept going on and on. By the time I finished reading it, I was flabbergasted. I ended up texting her to explain that I had gone to bed, and it's very important to me to be well rested to teach, so I don't respond to texts after I go to sleep. I apologized and told her I didn't think we were going to work out, and it wasn't because of any of the things she had listed. Story 40. There were 3 of us in a friend group. I had just started college, and one of my friends began dating a girl. Eventually, he introduced us, and she said I made a very good first impression. A few weeks later, they broke up. She confessed to my friend that she was interested in me, but I said no. I don't date a friend's ex for personal reasons, and I wasn't interested anyway. No judgment toward those who do. My route to college passed by her house, and I eventually noticed her watching me as I walked by. One day, she sent my friend a photo she had taken of me. She started doing that repeatedly. It was unsettling, especially seeing a silhouette watching me when I returned late in the evening. Things took a turn when she messaged my sister, claiming that I had used her, and saying she would come to my house with her mother to confront me. My friend, being a solid guy, kept all the messages she had sent him. His parents went with him and me to her house to clear everything up. After that, no more silhouettes appeared. Story 41. My ex and I dated for about a year and a half. After 100 or so conversations, it became clear she wouldn't stop drinking or seek help. This wasn't casual drinking. At least a few times a month, I had to clean her in the shower to get vomit out of her hair and off her body. I broke up with her. Naturally, she reacted by getting blackout drunk, taking painkillers, breaking into my room and lockbox to steal my gun, firing it in a public park, and passing out in her car, nearly asphyxiating on her own vomit. I was out of town at the time, and the police called, asking me to come get my gun and whether I wanted to press charges. She got out of the psych hold the next week and spent the following year and a half doing everything from trying to get me drunk to bang her after removing her birth control, to getting the date I broke up with her tattooed on her side. I finally moved to another state and changed my number. Story 42. This happened during a rough part of my life. Just months earlier, I had gotten out of the longest relationship I'd ever had, just over a year. Everyone kept telling me to get back on that horse and put myself out there. You never know what you might experience. Side note, that advice can be terrible. Anyway, I went on a date with a girl, a blonde, sorority type. Not really my cup of tea, but she seemed attractive enough for a first date, and we had similar interests in what we majored in. The first date went okay. I noticed something a little off about her gaze, but I tried to ignore it. Most people are nervous on a first date. Spoiler alert. She had a lazy eye that I couldn't quite get over. But that wasn't the worst part. The second date came around, and we decided to watch a movie at her place. She still lived with her parents, but convinced me it wasn't a big deal and that we'd have some privacy. The house was massive, though it was out in the country, nearly a mile from the nearest neighbors. That night, we made out a bit. We had a third date, which was pretty similar, but by that point I was thinking, okay, if I'm not feeling it after this date, I'm going to break it off. It was still early on, so I didn't think it was a big deal. Realistically, I probably should have stopped after the second date, but my emotions were still a mess from the breakup. The next day, we were texting while I was at work. She said she just wanted to spend time and cuddle because she'd had a rough day. I told her that, as flattering as it was, I simply wasn't feeling it and felt more comfortable going our separate ways. She freaked out over text, then called me, and then showed up at my work, having convinced her friend that she needed to stop by to use the bathroom. She spent 45 minutes screaming at me, insisting I was wrong about my feelings. I couldn't deny that she'd had a rough day. She'd apparently been fired from her job at the bank, but her friend kept telling her she was making everyone uncomfortable and wasn't acting like herself. Eventually, I tried to lower the security gate at my little concession stand turned help desk, but before I could close it, she jammed her hands underneath to stop it. I told her that if she didn't leave, I'd call the cops. Finally, her friend pulled her away after 5 minutes of blocking the gate. I locked the gate, secured myself inside, and asked my boss to sweep the building, having already informed her of the situation. The girl continued to text and call me for the next 3 months, often around 2 in the morning, saying things along the lines of how she was going to hurt herself and that it would all be my fault. Despite the fact that she showed up at my work after that day, I never communicated with her again. The only exception was one final message after those few months, telling her that if she continued to harass me, I would get a restraining order. She stopped after that. I always use her as an example of how crazy eyes are totally a thing. It wasn't just the lazy eye that made me uncomfortable. Story 43. It isn't so much a creepy girl story as it is a weird girl and her creepy mother. I'm from Sydney, Australia. Her name was Shelley, and I dated her for 8 weeks, from January to mid-March 2013. Her mother, Jane, took an instant dislike to me. From what I could tell, the mother and daughter were working together to try to frame me for SA, theft, burglary, trespassing, and a number of other things. Her mom told me a bunch of really strange things about Shelley. She said Shelley was a trust fund kid and extremely careless with her money, that it was easy to manipulate her and get her to sign over rights to it. She told me that after one drink, Shelley would pass out. She went into detail about their daily routine down to the minute. She mentioned that she kept $500 in cash inside a Bible and that Shelley had several diamond earrings worth thousands of dollars hidden in a drawer in the spare room. She also told me there was a spare key hidden inside a garden gnome in the front yard, along with other bizarre details like that. I assumed their plan was to give me ideas to break into their house and steal things. On one of our first dates, Shelley drank heavily and passed out. I took her to the hospital and said I lived 5 minutes away, so instead of worrying her mom, she could just call me and I would pick her up. Her mom found out and accused me of trying to change her next of kin details as a first step to steal Shelley's inheritance. Another time, Shelley suspiciously left her expensive cashmere jacket, bag, and purse, which had about $800 in it, at my house while she stayed at her cousin's house, 90 minutes away. Of course, her mom found out. Jane called me, demanding her daughter's belongings back. I said I would give the items back to Shelley when she got home. Her mom insisted that I deliver them that night, threatening that if I didn't, she'd come to my house with the police and have me charged with theft. I hung up and messaged her, saying she was more than welcome to come pick up her daughter's things, but otherwise, to leave me alone. She messaged again, insisting I drop them off at her house or she would involve the police. I replied that she could either pick them up at my house or wait until Shelley got back. Take it or leave it. About 10 minutes later, Shelley called, warning me not to damage her stuff or I'd have hell to pay. I told her the same as I had told her mom. Her mom was welcome to come pick up the items, but I was not dropping them off. The next day, her mom came to pick up the items. Before handing them over, I asked her to write a note confirming that the jacket and bag weren't damaged and that the money was all there, or I would only give them to Shelley. I had my phone recording the conversation with the MP3 recorder app in my pocket, though she didn't know. She wrote a note stating that nothing was damaged and all the money was there. I asked her, "So everything looks good and the money's all there?" She replied in a bitter tone, "Yes, you're lucky this time. SK 1711. I got her on tape admitting that everything was in good condition and the money was all there. I think her plan was to get the clothes, bag, and purse back, damage them herself, claim I stole her money, and then take me to the police or small claims court. Luckily, nothing came of it. There's no way I would have forgotten my wallet if it had that much money in it. I wouldn't even carry that much cash on me. I'd keep it in the bank and withdraw it from an ATM, and if I were only 90 minutes away, I could have driven back and gotten it. Another strange thing Shelley did was call me and claim that her brother had SA'd her multiple times, twice that week, and that whenever she told her mom just laughed and said she was imagining things. I actually knew her brother and had him on Facebook, and I knew for a fact he wasn't in Sydney. He hadn't been there for over a year. He lived on the other side of Australia, in Perth. That's like me living in Jacksonville, Florida, and him living in Los Angeles. It sounded really odd, so I left it alone. I think their plan was to get me to involve the police, and then her mom would sue me for defamation of character. Another strange thing was that neither Shelly nor her mom had Facebook. The final straw was when Shelly's mom told us she was going interstate to visit her sister for 2 days. She knew I would go over to spend time with Shelly. I did go that night, and around 11 p.m., she messaged her daughter saying she had arrived at her sister's house 3 hours away. Literally 5 seconds after receiving the message, Shelly became very touchy and kept insisting we do it. I thought it was suspicious, so I said, let's just watch the movie and have some fun after. 5 minutes later, her mom quietly opened the door, snuck into the living room and said, "Keep your hands off my daughter." All I was doing was having a coffee and watching a movie with her. I asked, "Aren't you supposed to be at your sister's house?" She replied, "That's none of your business where I'm supposed to be." I grabbed her daughter's phone, showed her the message saying she had arrived at her sister's, and she just said she didn't have to justify herself to me and told me to get out of her house. I then told both of them they were screwed and that I wanted nothing to do with either of them. I told Shelly we were officially over. I honestly think her mom's plan was to catch me being intimate with her daughter, or accuse me of essay or something along those lines. As I was leaving the house, her mom told me that she was going to get me into a lot of trouble for all the inconvenience I had caused her. About a week later, the police came to my house and said that Shelly's place had been broken into and that a bunch of her belongings were stolen. They also said that Shelly, Jane, and their neighbor claimed they had seen my car driving up and down her street 3 nights in a row. The neighbor supposedly saw someone the same height, size, and hair color as me, dressed entirely in black, in Shelly's backyard on the night of the break-in. Here's the good part. I was working night shift that entire week and was at work on camera the entire night. They were supposedly burgled. The times my car was supposedly seen driving around her street, I was also at work. Witnesses, camera footage, and GPS on my work vehicle all proved I was at work when they claimed to have seen my car. I told the police this and gave them my boss's number so they could obtain GPS printouts and camera footage. The police did so, and that was the last I heard about it. 4 days later, Shelly called me and said she had found her diamond earrings and was extremely sorry for any inconvenience she had caused. She sounded genuinely worried. I assume the police threatened to charge them with making a false report, and I think it made her realize the trouble she could get into for filing a false report, as well as the potential for a defamation of character lawsuit. After everything, I wanted nothing to do with them and have completely cut ties. I also contacted Crime Stoppers, which is a police tip line, and told them what Shelly said about her brother essaying her, just in case it had happened in the past, and she was telling the truth. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.